When you're in a job interview and they ask, "Do you have any questions for us?" This is your moment. It's not a formality, it's your power move. And if you want to stand out from every other qualified candidate, you don't ask about vacation time or what the dress code is. You ask, "What does success look like in this role after 90 days?" That single question does more than you think. It shifts the conversation from "Am I good enough for you?" to "Let's talk results." And here's why that matters. When you ask this, you immediately position yourself as someone who's not just interested in getting the job, you're interested in performing, in delivering, in contributing. This question tells the interviewer that you are already thinking like a top performer, someone who isn't waiting for permission or instructions to be valuable. You want to understand the scorecard, the expectations, the metrics. You want clarity because you don't just want to fit in, you want to win. Now think about the person on the other side of the table. They've probably interviewed 10, 15 people this week. Everyone's saying the same things. Everyone has similar experience, polished resumes, and practiced answers. But when you ask them to define success, you force them to articulate the real goals behind the job title. You're saying, "I'm not here to check boxes. I'm here to produce results, and I need to know what those results are, how they're measured, and what you expect from someone in my seat." You'd be shocked how many employers actually don't have a clear answer. And that's valuable information for you. If they're vague or can't explain what success looks like, that's a red flag. It means you might walk into a job with unclear expectations, constantly trying to hit a target that no one can define. That's a setup for burnout and frustration, but if they respond with clarity, if they say, "In 90 days, we'd like to see you own this process, lead this initiative, or build out this part of the system," then you've got insight. Now you know what to aim for, and more importantly, you know whether that aligns with what you're capable of delivering. And let's be honest, 90 days is a real milestone. It's not some vague, long-term someday kind of performance goal. It's short enough that the company is going to be paying attention, and long enough that you can actually make impact if you're intentional. So asking about success in that window shows that you're not just thinking about day one. You're planning your integration, your performance, your growth. You're serious. This question also sets you up to reframe the follow-up. If they give you specifics, maybe they say, "We want someone to streamline our reporting process, reduce errors, and improve turnaround time." You now have a chance to speak directly to that. You can say, "I've done that before in X role, and here's how I'd approach that challenge here." Suddenly, you're not just a candidate. They can see you in the role. You're bridging the gap between what they need and what you bring. That's influence. That's leverage. Too many people go into interviews hoping to impress by talking about themselves. But the people who get hired are the ones who ask the right questions, because asking smart questions doesn't just give you answers. It changes how you're perceived. It shows that you're strategic. It shows that you think in terms of value, not just responsibility. And it communicates confidence without saying, "I'm confident." It says, "I'm here to make a difference, and I need to know exactly how I can do that." So if you only ask one question in your next job interview, make it this one. What does success look like in this role after 90 days? Ask it directly, ask it with intention, then pause and listen. You'll learn more from that one question than you will from reading the job description 10 times. And the best part, it opens the door for a real conversation, one where you're not just trying to get the job, you're evaluating whether it's the right place for you to grow, contribute, and win. That's how you own your career. Asking, "What are the biggest challenges facing this team right now?" during a job interview is one of the smartest moves you can make. It's not just a thoughtful question, it's a strategic one. This isn't about trying to sound impressive. It's about positioning yourself as a problem solver before you've even been hired. You're saying, "I'm not afraid of challenges. I want to understand them so I can help solve them." And that mentality, that's rare. That's leadership, even if you're not applying for a leadership title. When you bring this question to the table, you're doing a few things. First, you're showing curiosity about the real environment you're about to step in, not just the polished version in the job description or the company website. You want to know what's really going on. That's bold. Most candidates are too afraid to dig into the messy stuff. They want everything to look perfect, but in the real world, no team is perfect. Every team has gaps, pain points, or blind spots. And when you ask about them, you're signaling maturity and professionalism. You're not afraid of the truth because you're already thinking about how you can be part of the solution. Second, this question unlocks context. If you understand the challenges a team is facing, you can assess where you fit. You're not just asking to be polite, you're gathering information that helps you make a better decision. If the hiring manager says, "We're struggling with communication across departments," or "Our deadlines are slipping due to lack of process," those are clues. That's the reality of the job, and now you can decide, do I have experience in this? Can I add value here? Does this align with the kind of work I want to be doing? This is how you evaluate a role like a professional, not just someone looking for a paycheck, but someone building a career. Let's also talk about how this question positions you. It subtly shifts the dynamic in the room. Most candidates are in performance mode. They're trying to impress, trying to say all the right things, trying not to mess up. But when you ask about team challenges, you flip that. You go from being evaluated to being the evaluator. You're now in a conversation, not an audition. You're talking like someone who's already on the team and trying to understand how to make things better. That shift in energy, that's powerful. It makes you memorable. It makes them start to imagine you already in the room, working alongside them. Another huge benefit, this question helps you prepare for what's coming if you do get the job. One of the biggest reasons people leave jobs quickly is misalignment. They walk in expecting one thing and they get something completely different. By asking about the challenges up front, you're reducing surprises. You're saying, "Tell me what's hard right now so I can decide if I'm ready to take that on." That's not just smart, that's responsible. You're protecting your energy, your time, your career trajectory. But here's the key, you can't just ask the question and move on. Listen carefully to the answer. If the interviewer is vague, something like, "Oh, nothing really, everything's great," you need to dig a little deeper. Because no team is challenge-free, that response either means they're not being honest or they haven't thought deeply about what's holding the team back. Both are data points for you. On the other hand, if they open up and give you real insight, "We've had a lot of turnover," or "We're understaffed and morale is low," don't panic. Ask follow-ups. What's being done to address that? What's worked and what hasn't? Again, you're gathering context and you're also showing that you can handle complexity. When you understand a team's challenges, you're better prepared to talk about your own experience. Maybe they say they need help implementing structure. Boom, you talk about the last time you introduced project management tools that improved efficiency. Maybe they're struggling with collaboration. You share how you led cross-functional meetings that eliminated silos. You take their pain points and position yourself as a solution. That's how you sell yourself without selling. That's how you align your value with their needs. At the end of the day, asking about team challenges shows that you're not just thinking about yourself. You're thinking about how you fit into the bigger picture. You're thinking beyond the role. You're thinking about impact, and companies remember people who think like that. So when you're sitting in that chair, remember, you're not just there to answer questions. You're there to ask the right ones, and this is one of the best, asking, "How do you support employee development and growth here?" During a job interview sends a clear message. You're not just looking for a job, you're looking for a place where you can grow, thrive, and contribute long term. This question immediately sets you apart because it shifts the conversation from short-term tasks to long-term potential. It shows that you take ownership of your career and you want to be intentional about choosing an environment that will invest in your development as much as you invest in your role. Most candidates go into interviews thinking about how they can prove they're qualified. That's important, but it's only part of the picture. The companies that are worth your time, the ones that want to retain top talent, aren't just hiring for skills, they are hiring for potential. They want to know who you can become inside the company, not just what you can do today. When you ask how employee growth is supported, you're saying, I'm here to get better, and I want to know if this is the right place for that. That's a mature, confident way to approach your career. This question also gives you a ton of insight into the culture of the organization. Do they invest in people, or do they expect you to figure it out on your own? Do they offer mentorship, leadership training, access to courses, or career path planning? Or is growth something you're expected to chase outside of work hours without any real support? Their answer will tell you a lot. If they light up and share examples, like promotions from within, skill, building programs, or how managers coach their teams, that's a great sign. But if they stumble or give vague answers like, oh yeah, we support learning, without any specifics, that's a red flag. It means development isn't a priority, it's an afterthought. It's also important to pay attention to how they talk about growth. Do they see it only as a vertical climb, more titles, more pay, or do they also encourage lateral development, like learning new departments, expanding skill sets, or getting exposure to different projects? The best environments offer both. They don't just expect you to climb a ladder, they help you build range. They encourage curiosity, experimentation, and growth that aligns with your evolving goals, because let's be real, what you want today might not be what you want in 2 years. You want to be somewhere flexible enough to support that journey. Asking this question also gives you a chance to talk about your own ambition. Once they respond, you can follow up with specifics. That's great to hear. I'm really interested in developing stronger leadership skills and eventually managing a team. How does that kind of path typically unfold here? You're not making demands. You're starting a conversation about alignment, about possibilities, and you're showing that you're not waiting for the company to create your future. You're ready to co-create it with them. That kind of initiative is magnetic. It tells them you're serious, you're invested, and you're thinking long term. Let's also be clear. Employee development isn't just about training budgets or formal programs. It's about the manager's mindset. Is feedback encouraged? Are stretch assignments part of the culture? Can you fail safely while learning something new? These are the real markers of a growth-oriented team. So if you can, ask for examples. Can you tell me about someone on the team who's grown significantly in the last year? That one question will reveal a lot. If they can't name anyone, or if they give a story from 5 years ago, that's information you need to have. But if they light up and say, actually, yes, one of our coordinators just stepped into a manager role after developing a new onboarding system. That's the kind of culture that builds careers, not just resumes. At the end of the day, this question isn't about perks or promises. It's about clarity. You want to know whether you're stepping into a stagnant role or one that can evolve with you. You want to know if the company sees its employees as long-term assets or short-term solutions. And most importantly, you want to take control of your growth instead of outsourcing it to hope. So the next time you're in that interview chair, don't just try to be impressive. Be intentional. Ask the questions that matter to your future. How do you support employee development and growth here? Is one of those questions, and the answer you get might tell you everything you need to know. Asking, how is feedback typically given and received on this team? In a job interview is a power move because feedback is one of the most important elements of a healthy work environment, yet it's often overlooked by candidates too focused on salary, title, or perks. The truth is, how a team communicates feedback reveals everything about its culture, whether it's collaborative or controlling, supportive or silent, empowering or toxic. When you bring this question into the conversation, you're signaling that you're not just here to do the work. You're here to grow, evolve, and continuously improve, and you understand that honest, constructive feedback is the foundation of that growth. When you ask this question, you immediately show emotional intelligence. You're saying, I care about communication. I want to know how I'll be coached, corrected, and recognized. You're not afraid of feedback, you're asking for it. That speaks volumes because high performers aren't afraid of being told how to get better. They crave it. They want to know where they stand, what's working, and what needs adjustment. If you ask this question and the response is positive, we have regular one-on-ones. We do monthly performance reviews, or we give feedback in real time. That's a green flag. It means you'll have the structure and support you need to thrive. But if the answer is vague, that's a sign to pause. If you hear things like, we're pretty informal about that, or we don't really have a system, it's a clue that communication may be inconsistent or even non-existent. That kind of environment can be frustrating, especially if you value clarity and growth. Because feedback isn't just about fixing what's wrong, it's also about reinforcing what's working. In great teams, feedback is constant and balanced. It doesn't just come when something's broken, it happens when someone does something well, takes initiative, or needs support. That's the kind of environment where people don't just perform, they excel. The way feedback is received is just as important as how it's given. You want to know if this is a team where people feel safe speaking up. Can junior employees give feedback to leadership? Are ideas welcomed from all levels? If feedback only flows top down, you may be walking into a rigid, hierarchical structure where voices are silenced and innovation is stifled. But if feedback is part of the everyday culture, shared across roles and levels, that's a space where people feel ownership and agency. That's a space where people feel seen. This question also gives you an opportunity to learn more about your potential manager's style. Because let's face it, your direct supervisor can make or break your experience. If they dodge feedback, delay conversations, or only speak up when there's a crisis, that's going to affect your ability to grow and succeed. On the other hand, if they give consistent, constructive input and create space for two-way dialogue, you're in good hands. So listen closely to how they describe their own approach. Do they mention transparency, open door policies, or team retrospectives? Or do they seem uncomfortable even talking about it? That reaction matters, and don't forget to connect the dots. Once they answer, you can follow up with your own preferences. Say something like, I've found that I grow fastest when I get regular feedback, both what I'm doing well and what I can improve. Does this team have that kind of rhythm built in? You're not just fishing for compliments, you're opening up a dialogue about what works best for you, and you're assessing whether this team aligns with your values. That's not entitlement, that's professionalism. It's how high performers choose the right environment instead of just hoping they'll be supported after they've accepted the offer. The truth is, feedback is the heartbeat of performance. Without it, people coast. Teams stagnate, problems fester, but with it, people get sharper, goals get clearer, work becomes a process of refinement, not just repetition. That's why this question is so critical. You're not just asking how people give feedback, you're asking whether this team has the courage to communicate, whether they value progress over perfection, whether they believe in building people, not just managing them. So next time you're preparing for an interview, put this one at the top of your list. Don't be afraid to go there. Ask, how is feedback typically given and received on this team? And when they answer, pay attention, because how they handle feedback will tell you exactly what kind of team you're walking into, and whether it's the right place for you to grow into your best self. Asking, what's something you wish you knew before you started working here? Might seem casual, even a little conversational, but don't be fooled. This question cuts deep, and that's exactly why it matters. It's the kind of question that breaks the script of a standard job interview and gets to the truth of what it's really like to work at this company. You're not just looking for the highlight reel, you're asking for the behind the scenes. The stuff that doesn't show up on the careers page or in the job description. And when you ask it, you're doing something powerful. You're gathering real insight while showing that you're thoughtful, mature, and serious about your next move. This question works because it disarms people. When you ask a hiring manager or team member what they wish they had known before they started, it nudges them to reflect, not just recite a pre-rehearsed pitch. You're giving them space to be real, and in that space, you often get honesty, maybe even vulnerability. That's where the good stuff lives, because every company has its quirks, its growing pains, its messy middle. When someone gives you an honest answer to this question, they're handing you a piece of the puzzle most candidates never get to see, and you're not just asking this to satisfy curiosity. You're asking this because you're taking responsibility for your own alignment. You're saying, I want to know what I'm getting into not just on paper, but in practice. That's how you take control of your career. You're not waiting for someone else to define the experience for you. You're actively gathering data so you can make the best decision for yourself. That's the difference between landing a job and building a career. When you ask this question, listen closely not just to what they say, but how they say it. If they hesitate, laugh nervously, or gloss over it with something vague like nothing, it's been great, take note, that might be a sign that they're either not being honest or not allowed to be, and either way, that's a clue. On the other hand, if they give you a thoughtful answer, even if it's not totally flattering, that's actually a good sign. Maybe they say, I wish I knew how fast things move. There's not always a lot of structure, and you have to figure things out on your own. That kind of answer gives you real context. Now you can ask yourself, do I thrive in that kind of environment? Does that match how I like to work? This question can also reveal how self-aware the organization is. Companies that create space for people to reflect, grow, and be honest tend to be the ones that support long-term development. So if the interviewer gives you a meaningful answer and then follows it up with how they've grown from that challenge or what the company has done to improve, that's a great sign. It means they don't just tolerate feedback, they use it. They evolve, and you want to be somewhere that's evolving. The other reason this question matters, it opens the door to dialogue, not just about the role, but about the culture. Maybe they tell you they wish they had known how cross-functional the work is, or how much autonomy they'd have, or how communication styles vary by team. These are things you wouldn't know unless someone told you. And now that you've asked, you get to follow up. You can say, thanks for sharing that. That's actually really helpful. How have you adapted to that? Or that sounds like something I'd enjoy. And you tell me more about how that shows up in day-to-day work. Now you're having a real conversation, not just a Q&A. You're connecting human to human, not candidate to interviewer. At the end of the day, this question isn't just about gathering information, it's about mindset. You're not stepping into your next job blind. You're stepping in with eyes open, expectations clear, and questions asked. You're not afraid to get to the real stuff. You're not afraid to ask the hard questions. And that's what makes you stand out. So when you walk into your next interview, ask it. Say, what's something you wish you knew before you started working here? And then really listen, because the answer might tell you more about the company than anything else you hear during that conversation. And that one insight might be the difference between a good decision and a great one.